Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here. It's a brunch edition of the show, December 3rd. It's a Tuesday, which means it's a Tuesday Thoughts edition of the show. And you guys have had some thoughts already today. So send more if you're listening live to us on Twitter at Soccer Down here. If you're listening later on the podcast, and I've had a lot of people reach out and say, well, I never get a chance to listen live, so I'm not able to join the conversation. Go ahead and tweet at us. We'll bring it up the next day, and we'll get to it. We want this to be interactive and fun, and for everybody to feel like they're part of this conversation. There's a very important thing to talk about first in our daily conversation, and that's Brooks Lennon. He is now part of Atlanta United after a trade yesterday. $150,000 in GAM, $150,000 in TAM head to Real Salt Lake, and Brooks Lennon heads to Atlanta United. Depth is something that we've talked about quite a bit, John, and Brooks Lennon will provide that. I think Brooks Lennon is a guy who can pick up some starts as well and gives you another option on the right side where, it felt like it was an issue that came up a few different times last season. You didn't have really anybody outside of Franco Escobar who could play at right back in a back four. Brooks Lennon has done that. He has that ability. He can play as a wing back like Escobar can, like Gressel can. He can play as a winger like Gressel can. So you've added another piece that's going to compete with those two for playing time, but can also get some starts of his own.
Right. And the discussion with Brooks Lennon goes back just in tire kicking, over a year, where I think it was Sam Stejskal had...
Summer of 2018, when you had some injuries on that side, and that window is when you were looking at it. It was August of 2018 when that window was coming to a close. That was a move that, according to Sam Stejskal, that Atlanta United explored.
And with all of the competitions and the schedule being what it is, and the 2020 schedule coming up sooner than really, we turn around, we're going to have the 2020 season already starting. But I think that with Brooks Lennon, you have someone who can fill in holes. You have someone who can give you starts. You have someone who can challenge. All of these things that you've talked about, and bringing in someone for the number that he was brought in, 300,000. It was 150 in GAM and 150 in TAM, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you bring in a quality player like a Brooks Lennon for that kind of a number, and in looking at the conversations, a lot of folks are saying that number was a steal in bringing in a talent like a Brooks Lennon for Atlanta United. So looking forward to seeing how he competes and where he fits in and how many different places he's going to be. But, like I said, you look at this conversation's been 16 months and he's finally here. So I look at this as a tremendous pickup for Atlanta United.
Well, he's not a shapeshifter. He's only going to be in one position at a time. And that was something that came up yesterday was, him and Gressel and Escobar, how is this going to work? Well, they can all do different things. They can all do some of the same things, but they can all do different things. Is there a scenario where you would see all three of them on the field together at the same time? Yeah, there is. It could work with Gressel inside, with Lennon on the wing, with Escobar as a right back. Yeah, it's absolutely possible. I don't think that's going to be, plan A, but that's the thing about a season that's going to include, if you do what you did last year, 47 games.
Yeah.
Or more. And you're going to need that depth because you're going to have injuries. You're going to have games pile up. You're going to need to rest guys, and you're going to need to rotate guys. And the ability of Gressel to play as a wingback, to play as a right winger, to play as a central midfielder gives him a lot of flexibility, and you can put him in different spots. Lennon can play anywhere on the right side. He can play on the left side too, and it's not his primary, but can he give you a spell at left back if needed? Yes, he can, and that's another bit of value that Brooks Lennon provides. And Escobar, we know what he can do playing as a right back. We know what he can do as a center back in a three-man back line. Haven't seen him as a center back in a four-man back line, but that's something that maybe you could see. And there's other possibilities with maybes and where you could move Gressel around too. So you've got a lot of flexibility with this group, and that's what you need because you're going to need a versatile group. You're going to need a group that can shift into different shapes, and I think that's where Frank de Boer wants to get to, is a group that's not pigeonholed, a group that can change in a match based off what the opponent is doing, but also change in the pre-match going in from a 3-5-2 to a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 or a 3-4-3 and can shift around based on what's needed. A guy like Lennon adds to that, and he's a technical player, he's a quick player, he's a dangerous player in the 1v1s. He's part of the US U23s right now that's trying to qualify for the Olympics. Brooks Lennon will be a good addition to this team, and I think for the price that Atlanta United paid, it's not a risky pickup either.
Yeah, and what Shiva wanted to know this morning, she wanted to find out more about him and what it could mean for the future of Julian Gressel. I think that really
it doesn't change anything.
Yeah,
it doesn't change anything because Brooks Lennon's out of contract at the end of 2020 as well. So, you have Lennon and Gressel now out of contract at the end of 2020. You're going to have to make decisions. It doesn't change anything immediately. It gives you more depth, which gives you more options, which, yes, opens up doors to things, but it doesn't directly change anything because Brooks Lennon isn't under contract on a long-term basis. So it doesn't immediately change anything. I think it's easy to go, 1 + 1 = 3 sometimes, but this doesn't necessarily tell you that.
Yeah, for me, it was what it could mean for the future of Gressel. I had it as two independent thoughts. It's like Gressel's over here, Brooks Lennon's over here. There was no intersection as to one.
No, I disagree with that. That's overly simplistic because if you didn't have another option at those positions, then it changes the value of Julian Gressel to the team. Absolutely. I mean that's valid. There's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't directly say that things are going to change or there's not going to be a contract offered or stuff like that. It doesn't change anything with where the negotiations are down to the CBA part of it because Lennon's not on a long-term deal. If he was, it's a little bit of a different conversation in my book, but he's not. He's somebody that you're going to have to figure out, has he shown enough to stay? We don't know any option situation with him. No idea. He's listed on Transfermarkt as out of contract at the end of 2020. That's what people have reported. There could be an option there, and you could have the ability to bring him back on an option contract, but you don't know. All that we know at this point is that Gressel is out of contract at the end of 2020, and they are talking, and he is a priority according to Carlos Bocanegra, but you're waiting on the CBA to provide more instruction. So it's like most things, in my opinion. Like, does it directly mean that, oh, no, that means Gressel's not coming back? No, it doesn't mean anything like that at all. Does it mean, nothing at all? No. It's another player in that side of the field who can earn another contract. And that's the world of soccer. It's the world of pro sports. It's the world of any business, to be perfectly honest. You always have to have depth. You always have to plan for, what could happen. Things change. People leave. Injuries happen. You never know. So to have another option, it's another option, and it's a valid option, but it doesn't directly mean anything's going to happen tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to say that it has nothing to do with it because that's not necessarily true. It's another depth piece, and it's a guy who can earn playing time over somebody else. But he's not on a long-term deal, and that's the important thing here is that there's no commitment to Brooks Lennon past 2020 as far as we know, outside of any option that has not been reported. And even that, okay, that adds one more year, and it's an option that you're going to have to make a decision on. So there's no guarantee of a deal past 2020. If there was, I think we'd be having a little bit different conversation, but there's not.
Yeah, we've had a lot of folks chiming in about a bunch of different things, but obviously the Brooks Lennon acquisition yesterday, that got a lot of folks talking, and glad that we were able to talk about that off the top.
Well, what else are people saying about Brooks Lennon?
But yesterday, right now, Shiva was the only one in the barn about Brooks Lennon.
Oh, okay. I thought
about the show in and of itself.
People.
No, just in general conversations. But no, a lot of folks, yesterday, just outside of our purview, were looking at Brooks Lennon and sitting there and saying that it was a good piece of business by Atlanta United.
Yeah, there's been very few, I think, negative pieces about it. You have now the ability to bring in a player who was developed at Real Salt Lake, but then went to Liverpool. There's not a lot of guys out there in MLS who spent time developing at Liverpool. There just aren't. So, he's been part of a U20 World Cup. He's been part of U20 CONCACAF Championships. He, came back to Real Salt Lake when there wasn't an opportunity to do a long-term deal at Liverpool. So, you're talking about a talented player, and I think what stands out to me about him is his technique, his ability when he goes forward. I think as just about any attacker who is playing in a defensive role or converting to a defensive role, you have to be better defensively, and you have to continue to get better defensively. Usually comes with time. He needs more experience there. He can be better defensively, absolutely. But he's also someone who has played more as a right back in a four-man back line than Julian Gressel has. Gressel in a wing back role is one of the best in the league, and Lennon can play that as well. But as a right back, you go back to what Frank de Boer said when he played the 3-4-3 at the beginning of last season with Escobar injured. He said he did not have anyone else that he could play at right back, and Julian Gressel was healthy. He didn't feel comfortable about that move. He'd rather play Gressel in a 3-4-3 in a different role. Now you have Lennon, who has that experience. Now, is he going to show enough quality to convince Frank de Boer of being able to play right back in a four-man back line? That's what preseason is going to be all about. Because if he can do that, then you've answered that problem. He's a player who started at left back as well. You answer that problem. You have depth on both sides, and it's not just a player who you feel like is at their ceiling. You're talking about a player who I think is still growing and a player who is still getting better. And that's big. You haven't seen the best of Brooks Lennon yet. And that's a great situation to be in if you're Atlanta United when you get him for the price that you did.
And so when are we looking at? When's training camp start with international play?
Nothing's been announced yet.
Okay.
It hasn't. I believe other teams have said that they're starting around the 11th of January.
Okay.
But Atlanta United hasn't announced anything yet. The only thing we've heard is a preseason trip to Guadalajara, but we don't know details or anything like that just yet. So,
okay.
Starting in second week of January.
5 weeks.
Safe bet. Yeah, 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, 5 or 6 weeks. Okay. So now just marking my calendar for when everybody hops in and gets ready for international competition and then welcoming the new guys in. That's why I asked.
Okay. Let's take a quick break. We're going to get into other questions because you guys have thrown some different questions at us on a Tuesday Thoughts edition. We'll get into that. We'll get caught up on the re-entry draft because Stage 2 is today, and players who get picked today, you're basically picking up their rights. You can offer them a deal that has nothing to do with the option that had been declined on them or their previous contract. And if they're not picked today, they become a free agent. And there are some players that could be very, very interesting to a number of teams that could be falling into either situation. A couple other moves around the league yesterday. Some rumors flying around as well. We'll get caught up on all of that today as we go, too. But throw more questions at us on Twitter, @SoccerDownHere, and we'll dig into those on the other side of the break.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down Here, December 3rd edition. It's a brunch edition. I don't know what people do for brunch on a Tuesday, but, hey, have at it. It's all good. Probably
especially
not
when it's 40 degrees outside.
You can have a cold brunch. I don't think brunch stops just because it's cold outside.
You don't want a cold brunch, though. You know what you want, like warm food on a cold day?
You could have a warm food brunch. Did I miss the memo that you can't have warm food for brunch?
No, that's what I was aiming at. No, it's like on a cold day that you were looking to have warm food. You want to necessarily have cold food on a cold day for brunch. That's what I was getting at.
I was just saying I didn't know what people had for brunch on a Tuesday. That was all. I wasn't talking about the temperature.
Tuesday brunch means you have to have X.
No, sometimes I like warm food for brunch. Sometimes I like a pastry. It's all good. Usually I'm going to go pastry. I'm easy. Yeah. But sometimes I go for a sandwich.
Yeah. For me, I think I'm going to go with pasta today. Get my carb load.
Well, that's just lunch. That's not brunch.
I don't have any brunchy food here in the house right now.
So you'll have lunch after the show?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because if I'm eating brunch during the show, it gets kind of noisy.
It depends on how you do it. I mean, you could probably handle it, but it's okay. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, that's all good.
What are we talking about here?
That's true. You probably drop your phone in your bowl of porridge or whatever you're eating, and it'd be all kinds of problems. All right. Let's get into the Twitter timeline as it stands right now. What are people thinking about on a Tuesday?
Well, Jason Heinley's thinking about listening to the show in its entirety during brunch, and he planned out his drive to where he was listening to the entire show during this time slot.
Well, hello, Jason Heinley. Thank you. That's very cool. Sometimes we like to mix it up occasionally. Sometimes things happen. You got some things you got to run around and do first thing in the morning. So, it happens occasionally, especially in the off season. In the off season or after games on the road is when you get the weird time slots.
Yes. But bottom line is that we're still here. Just sometimes the time slot's a little different, and that's how it rolls sometimes. But Sir Jay
on the road, Jason.
Yes, both hands on the wheel and safe driving. Yeah, so listen safely, I guess, is probably the best way to phrase it. After yesterday's show and the scheduling news that caused us to go an extra half hour, Sir Jay LaFleur wanted to know, how will the 9 West Coast matches be determined for Atlanta United?
Drawing them out of a hat? I don't know. I actually disagree with the randomness of it, because I think Jonathan Tannenwald, when he was going back and forth with Mike Conti and Rob Abramovitz from NYCFC and others, I think he nailed it. You're going to see some matchups because of TV. Flat out. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. You're not going to miss the opportunity, if you're Major League Soccer, to have Atlanta and LAFC play. You're not going to do it. You're not going to, if you are going to pull teams out of a hat to see who plays, you're going to...
Frozen envelope will include LAFC.
No, you're just going to change it. You're just going to say, no. Or ESPN and Fox are going to be kicking down the door and saying, no. Because you're going to have Atlanta and LAFC. You're going to have probably Seattle and Toronto, an MLS Cup matchup. You're probably going to have Seattle and Atlanta. You're probably going to have the LA teams and NYCFC, maybe the Red Bulls. You're probably going to have Toronto and Vancouver play for the Canadian market. You're probably going to have Montreal and Vancouver play for the Canadian market. You are... What other ones would I think you would definitely have?
Chicago.
You're going to
LA.
have Nashville and Cincinnati. You're going to... I think those are probably the definites. It'd be crazy not to have Chicago and Minnesota.
Yeah.
But those are probably the definites. It's going to be a lot of TV that decides it. So Miami will probably get big games with your big LA teams, with Seattle, with Portland. You'll probably get Atlanta and Portland again. Like, you're going to get some of those. So my guess would be, if you're looking at the teams out west, that Atlanta will not play.
Vancouver, RSL, and who?
Vancouver, I would say, is a yes. I'm not sure on RSL just yet. We know they're playing Nashville. I'm going to say Vancouver, Colorado, and Houston are the 3 that I will say, or Dallas, one of those 2, that Atlanta won't play. That is just my guess, because I think that TV is going to have a say in the matchups. And then that leads you to the next question. TV has a say in the matchups. That means you're going to get big teams playing some big teams. That means an unbalanced schedule becomes more unbalanced. Yes, it does. 100%. Because you're not going to leave it to chance, and you're going to have some wild varieties in strength of schedule. More than you've had in the past, where you're playing each team in the other conference once, but you're alternating home and away year after year. You had some variety there. Atlanta's schedule in 2019, I think, was more difficult than it was in 2018 because of the travel, because of some of the short rests, stuff like that, because of the teams that you had to travel to. Now, you could see some teams with a much easier schedule and some teams with a very difficult schedule, depending on how things come out. I think that gap is just going to get wider, and I do think how they decide the 10 games against the other conference is going to play into that. I think the bigger teams are going to have tougher schedules. I don't think there's any way around it.
And this goes back to the discussion that we had yesterday with the supporters' shield being thrown further and further back in the ways of importance because of the unbalanced schedule.
Yeah, but I mean, that was already a given. It just is. No surprise there. It's kind of the nature of the way MLS had been structured anyway, was just because you did have variety in schedule difficulties to begin with. Now it's even more pronounced. So, yeah, I mean, it's still a big deal, but I saw Stephen Goff, say the same thing that we have. It's like the President's Trophy now in the NHL. It's a trophy. It's cool, but the fact that MLS puts a CONCACAF Champions League spot to it is really good, and that props it up as important. I think you could really have a valid argument now that they shouldn't put that spot towards it. I don't think they will. I think they need to keep it there to keep that trophy as an important thing. But you could argue that the next best of the semifinalist that loses with the best record, the conference finalist that loses and doesn't go to MLS Cup with the better record should go ahead of the Supporter Shield winner because of the formatting. You could make that argument. I don't think it'll change. I don't think it'll change anytime soon because I do think the scheduling format is going to evolve over these expansion years. But for now, yeah, you could see somebody win the Supporter Shield and not be a favorite at all to win MLS Cup because they get such an easier schedule.
Marshall Voigt is going back to a soccer over there discussion point.
Okay.
Sky Sports Premier League. If I could get my upper plate to work this morning, I would be wonderful. Referees may be allowed to communicate directly to supporters and explain their decisions involving VAR under a radical new proposal from football lawmakers. And so Marshall says, what a radical idea. I'd like at pro referees to take a chapter out of rugby's playbook and allow TV viewers to listen in on all of the refs' conversations. # Tuesday Thoughts.
I'm curious to see how this would work. I'm curious. I don't know the rugby setup, so I don't have any, a real understanding of how they do it. So the Sky Sports article, IFAB discussing how to improve communication with fans over VAR decisions. So what they're saying sounds like American football and referees saying what it is. It says this may involve supporters hearing a final decision and brief explanation from a referee, but fans would still be unable to listen to match officials during the decision-making process. I'm fine with that. I do like when you have that ability after the fact. I don't know if it helps, and I don't know if it would help the referees in real time. They need to have that discussion, and they need to be sure that it's not going to be broadcast and they're not going to be put in a bad light if need be. You could have a bit of an argument between a video assistant referee and a center. Like, no, I have the video. I see this. And back and forth. I don't know if that benefits anybody, if that's broadcast live. I do think the idea of being able to flip the mic that's pumped into the PA to say, instead of just the motions, to be able to say, after consulting with the video assistant referee, the goal is called back due to player 12 being offside in the buildup. Done. Then it would basically be American football. And
yes.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no, if you did something like that, then we're used to it on this side of the Atlantic. So for me, it wouldn't necessarily be something that's completely out of the ordinary. But I think what it would do is it would also you would like to think that it would help the fan over in the Premier League understand what's going on, with the decision that's being made and the rationale behind it.
IFAB will also be discussing concussion assessment and management of players during matches. It's understood further talks are likely before a decision is made on whether to introduce temporary substitutions in the game. Have lots of talks, people. Stop delaying this. This is nonsense. Patrick Nelson, Irish Football Association Chief Executive, he's IFAB's chairman. He told Sky Sports News this. Concussion will be one of the main issues. We will take this very seriously. We will look at how we can work within the laws of the game to try to minimize the effects of concussion. It's very, very early stages, so don't expect anything too dramatic just yet. It will be one of the key items that we discuss. Stop with the early stages nonsense. Stop. You had a player in the World Cup final in 2014 continue to play concussed and had no idea where he was. 2014, 5 years ago. We're past early stages, guys. If you're not, that's your problem. Get it right. Come up with the way within the laws of the game to allow temporary substitutions so players can truly get checked for a concussion. Do it. Stop delaying it. Stop coming up with excuses. It's not early stages in the discussion of concussions in the world of soccer. It's not. It is for you. That's your own problem. Fix it. Way past this nonsense.
Check. Double check. I agree with you completely. I mean, there really isn't a whole lot there that I can add to that except that, yes, get it done. It's about damn time.
Over it.
Over it. Also on the board, Nathan Pugh says he likes brunch.
Brunch is good. Brunch is good because you can lean breakfast, you can lean lunch, you can have something small, you can have something big. Like it provides a lot of flexibility.
Alex at Cuppers has a couple of thoughts. Robles is a great pickup by Miami. Will improve the back line and locker room while it's still making great saves.
Yeah, totally agree on that. Totally agree on Robles to Miami. That was one of the big moves yesterday that had been rumored before. Luis Robles is your starter now for Miami in goal. That allows you to bring Drake Callender along, and it'll allow him, too, to get a lot of time with USL League One, Miami's team that'll be launching there. So that's good. You have Brian Meredith as a backup. You're in good shape in goal now. Problem solved. You have a back line that you also added AJ De La Garza. He could start on the right side, maybe instead of Alvis Powell. He could start in the middle if you want to move Christian Macoun to the midfield, as some have speculated. You have a young center back in Grant Lillard. You have veterans on the left side in Ben Sweat and Mikey Ambrose. Luis Robles can keep that group very well organized, and adding him and De La Garza just strengthens a defense. And, when you look at how expansion teams are built, good expansion teams put an emphasis on defense. Bad ones don't. Inter Miami has put a good emphasis on defense so far. I don't think they're done. I think they're going to continue to add to it, and that's going to serve them well. It'll just give them a base to build upon.
And then other thoughts, he's jumping in with the Brooks Lennon discussion. He says he doesn't know much about Lennon. Seems like a nice pickup for a backup winger / fullback that's young enough to provide future upside. Also do not think this, quote, means anything for Gressel's future, end quote, other than more depth and cover for him if FDB wants him inside at all. And also general 4-3-3 helps since FDB said Franco was the only option for back right.
That's the big one for me, is that, it gives you a player who's played as a right back and a left back and a four-man back line. So you do have that depth. I don't think he is strictly a depth piece. I think Lennon will be a player who will get double-digit starts. I think he'll get his fair share of starts in all competitions. It just increases the competition within the squad, and that's where you want to be. And that does affect, as we said before, that affects Julian Gressel, it affects Franco Escobar. They have to be playing at a high level, because if they're not, now you have a player who could push either one of them to the bench. That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing for a team. That's a good thing for a team. And I always go back to something Pep Guardiola said as he's built Manchester City. They've added to their roster every year, and he's like, look, when you keep winning, it's difficult to have that focus and that competition within the squad, because players have won things. You have that little bit of comfort, but when you keep adding strength to your squad, you increase the competition within. And that forces players to be at their best. So adding Brooks Lennon gives him an opportunity to play with a big team. It pushes Julian Gressel. It pushes Franco Escobar. All these things are good.
Tofka's on a roll this morning, and his first topic outside of MLS in and of itself. He says, an interesting factoid. Transfermarkt reports the total sum of AM used in trades, but is simple dollars. Nagby's reported as well.
I think because Transfermarkt is a global service, they're trying to put a transfer value on every move, because that's how some of their values are generated. So it's not. I get why they're doing it. I mean, they have to do something. I don't think they have a AM to dollar conversion rate. So you just put it in there as what the transfer would be, because if you didn't have allocation money and you had transfers within MLS, that's what they would be going for. So, it is what it is. I get why Transfermarkt does it. It's just not an exact translation.
And we will save Tafka's opus of opuses for a little bit. Nathan Pugh says that me eating pasta for brunch is an abomination. # Tuesday Truth.
It is. It is.
By the time the show's over, it's lunch. Therefore, I'm eating pasta.
So you're eating it for lunch. You said you were eating it for brunch. That's where you got in trouble.
Brunch for me would be like breakfasty things, but I don't have any breakfasty things here in the office.
It doesn't have to be. Pasta doesn't really fit into that. It does create a conversation about, where are the limits drawn in what brunch is. I think everything breakfast can go into the brunch category, but yes. I don't think everything lunch goes into the brunch category.
Agreed. I think that's your limitation here, is that because
sandwiches go into the brunch category.
Yes, sandwiches do go into brunch. But
not necessarily even like breakfast sandwiches, just sandwiches.
No,
I think go
like sandwiches. Yeah, like if you're going to have a ham and cheese sandwich, that would count, I think, as a brunch, because it's not the hard and fast idea of a meal. And now we're getting into the whole is a sandwich a meal conversation. But I think that you have sandwiches in and of itself. I think that does fit into the brunch category. But I think that lunch type things, as I use air quotes, I don't think that not everything files into the brunch category.
No, I don't think it does.
So basically what we're saying is that everything breakfast can be brunch, but not everything lunch can be brunch.
Yes.
Okay, that's what we're getting into.
That feels right to me, and pasta does not feel like a brunch option.
It is a lunch for me.
So you are skipping brunch and you are having pasta for lunch. That's correct. Let's clarify.
Yeah. Yes. Michael Head says that he loves how you disagree with almost everything I say, including a cold brunch.
It happens sometimes. I'm just saying.
Yeah, cold brunches do happen.
Yeah, no, cold brunches. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I had no idea where you were going with that. Sorry, and it just made no sense to me. Like, I was just talking about it being brunch time. That was all.
Yeah,
nothing. And you said it was cold, and for some reason the temperature outside affected the potential temperature of the food, and I don't think they have one. No.
For me, sometimes you just on a cold day you want something warm. You want soup. You want a heated sandwich. You want a heated meal. I mean, but then there are times where on a cold day you want ice cream, because there's the old wives' tale about it balancing out the body temperature, and so that way you can go outside after eating ice cream and it doesn't affect you as much.
I never heard that one.
Seriously, you never heard that?
Never heard that.
Yeah, it's an old wives' tale. People will eat cold things before they go out on a cold day, so they're not affected as much by the cold weather.
Never ever heard that.
I'm not going to try that today, mind you. I'm not going to have cold food and then wander outside.
It's not that cold. It's cold, but it's not that bad.
KFC this morning says she's always happy to see U.S. youth players with the club, homegrown or otherwise. She thinks it would help give players a sense of where they are in their development and chances to learn together, hoping the depth on the right side keeps guys from playing fatigued in a busy schedule.
Yeah, that last part's key, and I'm with KFC. It's good to see players who come through and earn those spots. I don't think anything should be handed to domestic youth players. I know some have pushed that envelope. I don't. I want the competition to be there and the best players to come through. I don't think it's MLS's job to develop players for the national team. I think they're going to, and they should be rewarded when they do. But I don't think that should be their only limitation. So it's kind of an interesting one timing-wise, because Tom Marshall, who's a great follow if you're getting into Liga MX and especially covering the Mexican game in English, he's at Mexico World Cup. Tata Martino is speaking in front of the team owners for Liga MX today, and Tata Martino is going to make his case for the reduction of foreign players in Liga MX, wants to promote more Mexican players in the league and getting more playing time. I'll be curious to see how that goes. Liga MX is one that in previous years you didn't see many Mexican players leave Mexico. I think you're starting to get more and more who are going to Europe now. But the flip side is, as Liga MX teams have spent more on international players, especially South American players, you're cutting out some of the spots for the young Mexican talent that has come through and been very, very good at the youth national team level. And that's, I think, the crux of what Tata Martino is proposing. MLS has many more spots for international players than Liga MX. I'm not sure the direct comparison. One thing that makes it more complicated is the green card situation. And there's nothing legally that MLS can do to limit players who have a green card or put them in a different category. Like you're just bound by law. You can't do that. So that makes it a little trickier for Major League Soccer. I do like what Mexico has done, and I don't know how strongly they enforce it, about limits on minutes for, or not limits. I think they're trying to reward teams that play young Mexican players more. I think there's certain guidelines of how many minutes they're supposed to get. I'd love to see something like that in MLS, and I would, even if allocation money stays, figure out a way to reward teams that play young American talent, because those are the ones who are likely not going to have the resources to go out and spend big in the market. So reward them with extra allocation money, or reward them with the ability to re-sign your own talent and have an extra allocation fund to do that, or an extra bit of allocation money specifically for homegrown players. I don't know, whatever it is. I think there's things to learn from it. I'll be curious to see how Tata Martino's case is heard in Mexico, and what the owners feel like will benefit what they're doing. Do they feel like being in a situation where you have more Mexican players, less international players, will help them make more money? Is what it comes down to for the owners. And I'll be curious to see where they go in this, because I think they've kind of went back and forth over the years on more Mexican players, less Mexican players. Open it up a little bit more, pulling it back a little bit more. So I'll be curious to see where this discussion leads Mexico. And I hope MLS is paying attention to this kind of stuff. And maybe the partnership with MLS and Liga MX will lead to some discussions in these areas and sharing best practices, because, look, Mexico has been one of the best countries in the world at Youth World Cups. The United States hasn't. So there's obviously something to learn from it.
John Nason asks, what are you hearing about the new schedule makeup for 2020 that we may not be? Does that MLS hear more than just a few voices of discontent with the format? And do you think they'll respond with more information about the way forward in the coming years?
I'm not hearing anything. I'm not that plugged in. I just sit and talk about stuff when it pops up. So I'm not that special, John. I hope that they're hearing more. I hope that they're listening to the reaction to things. I mean, you can't run the league based off how people react to things. You can't, because sometimes they have to make decisions and they have to, not share every bit of information. I mean, for example, if the Charlotte expansion is not finalized and there's still, loose ends, then they can't share the planning that is going forward with that idea that it's happening. They can't share that publicly. I get that. I understand that. I do hope that when everything is buttoned up on Team 30, that they explain what the process will be going forward. And the one thing that I would like the clarification on is, okay, there's two. The number of games in the regular season, are they locked into 34? Is that a CBA issue? If they're locked into 34, then you're locked in. If you're not, what is the, I guess, hesitancy about going to a longer regular season? And the 1B to my 1A is, the potential expansion of interleague play with Mexico, is that part of the reason why you don't want to go above 34 regular season games in MLS? And if it is, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that at all. If the League's Cup becomes, something very unique in the world of soccer, which I'd be fine with. If everybody's involved in it in some way, when everybody started talking about interleague play and combining leagues, there was a massive freak out, which is understandable. But if it's not truly interleague play and it's a cup, and if it's a cup with a group stage and all that kind of stuff, cool. I'm good with it. It's going to be good for MLS as a whole because you have to play top competition to get better. And obviously the top MLS teams can play at this level, and they've got to show that they can win. But your bottom MLS teams have to be able to do it too, just like your bottom Liga MX teams have to show that they can do it. So those are the big questions I have, is just the length of the schedule and is that partnership that is expected to grow, is that part of the reason why you want to keep it at 34? Because if you do that, and if everybody's going to play 34 regular season and everybody's going to play at least 3 interleague games with Mexico starting in the next few years. Okay. If that's 37 guaranteed before you're talking playoffs, before you're talking Open Cup, it's not bad. It's not bad. I'd be okay with that. And if your schedule looks different than everybody else in the world because of that, well, that's the trade-off you make.
Nick Brawley with a couple of thoughts this morning. He thinks that along the line of Robles, he says he's been a top 5 keeper in the MLS for a few years.
Yeah, he has. It was an interesting discussion that Robles had with Counterattack with Tony Meola and Brian Dunseth yesterday on SiriusXM FC. He said that as they got towards the end of the season, Robles got the idea based off what Dennis Hamlet, the sporting director, and what Chris Armas said, and he could tell that they were going to move on. They felt like it was time for Ryan Mara, and they didn't want to sign Robles to another deal. And hey, that happens with a 35-year-old goalkeeper. I think what Robles said about the way they handled it is really important because the Red Bulls handled this correctly and did it with a lot of class. Robles said, "So at that point, I said, thank you. I appreciate everything that you guys have allowed me to do. And if it's okay with you, I just ask that you don't explore too many other options in just letting me go." And he said, "I thought Dennis did me a solid by just letting me go because it was going to give me the best chance in deciding where I could go. I really was grateful to him." That's class. Because you see it so many times when an organization has made that decision and they don't give the player who has been a great figure for them for so many years a say in where they end up. They just trade them. This was an opportunity that Robles got to call his shot, and he deserved that after the career he's given the New York Red Bulls. So Dennis Hamlet did this right, and Robles putting this out there and saying it, that will give players a good feeling about if Red Bull comes calling, like, hey, they're gonna do right by me if I do right by them, and that's a good spot to be in if you're the New York Red Bulls.
Follow-up question from Nick. He says, where does Juan Agudelo wind up? I've always watched him play and have glimpses of brilliance, but he tends to disappear more often than not. Do you feel like there's a team he fits into more than his previous ones?
I mean, that's the problem, is the glimpses of brilliance have not been consistent. And, where he ends up, I think he needs to play up top. He needs to be in a spot where he's going to play up top on a regular basis. Where that could be, you start to, look through the list, and Chicago's one. Don't think Cincinnati would be one. Colorado, no. Columbus, DC, maybe, but Ola Kamara is there, so I'd probably say no. Not Houston. The LA Galaxy are going to go bigger, I think, than Agudelo, so it's not a fit there. LAFC, it doesn't seem like a fit, although I really think it would be. I think Bob Bradley could get the best out of him, and I think he would be a really good fit for them, but they do have Adama Diomande. I don't think they're going to go down that road. Miami probably going to go bigger with their forward role. Minnesota's an intriguing spot. Angelo Rodriguez has not gotten it done. I don't know if Mason Toye has given you enough to say that, yeah, he's the guy. Could Juan Agudelo go in there and be their starting number 9? Yeah, I think he could. I think he could go to Montreal as well. Thierry Henry, I believe, knows him from their overlapping time at Red Bulls. That could be a really good fit. Montreal might be the big hit here. Minnesota's a possibility. He's not going to Nashville, not going to NYC. I don't think he's going to go to Red Bulls, go back there. I think they're happy with what they have. Orlando's talking about bigger names. Philadelphia's set up top. Portland is another somewhat intriguing possibility if you're not completely sold on Jeremy Ebobisse. Real Salt Lake, I think, is good. San Jose is linked to big names, and I think they're good. Seattle's good. Kansas City is looking to go bigger, and I think they probably should. Toronto doesn't need it. Vancouver, who knows? I mean, they have options up top, but I don't know where Mark Dos Santos is going to go. So anybody Vancouver's attached to, I'm just kind of like, all right, let's see how it works. Minnesota and Montreal are the two that really jump out to me. Portland as a possibility, but Montreal is probably, if I was Juan Agudelo, if he does go through this process, doesn't get picked up, becomes a free agent, Montreal would be a good place to start.
Jason came back in, and of course my misreading of emojis has affected me again.
Oh, no.
He says, to clarify, his drive was planned around the 9 a.m. show. He didn't see the schedule change until 9:05, hence the raised eyebrow emojis. Now he's going to listen intermittently, then catch the podcast later.
Okay, well, we're waving hi when you're listening to the podcast. Sorry, Jason. My bad.
No, it's my bad, because I thought he was planning his 2-hour drive around the show normally.
No, it was your bad for the tweet, but it was my bad for the show being at 11 instead of 9.
Colonel's in this morning. Morning, Colonel. He says that MLS could have created an unbalanced schedule with 14 in the East and 12 in the West. Moving Nashville to the West is awkward, frustrating, and unnecessary. Still 7 into the playoffs.
Yeah, you could have. You could have done that. You could have done it a few different ways. I think you could have just done it with Chicago going to the West, and if they come back to the East, they come back to the East. That would have been fine. Yeah. Nashville will end up back in the East. I don't know how this got decided. I would have leaned to giving Nashville the best possible runway to be successful straight out of the gates, and I do think that having matches with nearby potential rivals, and everybody's gotten worked up about rivalries again because, man, we yell about rivalries more than anything else. It would have been good for Nashville to have home and aways with Atlanta and home and aways with Cincinnati. I think it only would have strengthened what they're doing. I don't think that's a bad thing at all, and I think MLS missed out on that. I don't know what they necessarily gained by doing it the other way and moving Chicago, keeping them in the East and not moving them. I don't know. I think it would have been better the other way, but, I don't know the full story. So if it's just going to be a one-year thing and Nashville's back in the East to stay after that, or you're going to go to 3 conferences very soon or whatever, then it's probably a lot of arm waving for nothing. And that's what I do think ultimately it will end up being. But in the short term, I think Nashville would have been better off if they had those home and aways with Atlanta and Cincinnati.
I'm saving Tafka's opus to the beginning of hour number 2.
Okay, that's frightening.
Because there are several points, actually more than several points that he is making, boy. So I'm going to save that. So, John Nason, just think that not playing every team in the league is cheating the fan base when it's obviously possible with some tweaks. 2 conferences, 3-4 divisions, whatever. There are plenty of choices. # Tuesday Thoughts.
I agree. I'd rather see every team played. I would. I think you still could have done the same types of things if you had been able to move the pieces around and make that happen. I do wonder about why they stuck to 34, and if it's a CBA issue, then I get it a little bit more. And that's where my head has been on this the whole way. But I agree. You could have thought outside the box with divisions. You could have done it differently with really moving things around. And I think you're going to have to when you add more teams, as you are about to do. And if this is just a 1-year blip, then it's a 1-year blip. We just don't know. And that's what I kind of hate about it, is we don't really know the reasoning on it. And that's what I wish we knew. But hopefully we'll get that when we can.
Also on the board, Tafka, outside of his opus, says, I think we can all agree that Gressel has, in his 3 years, been one of the more clinical finishers on our team. Is there a chance that in addition to all his other positional flexibility, he could also serve as, quote, an option, end quote, as backup forward on the depth chart?
That's where he played in college. So, yeah, I think he could. I don't. He'd be a very different kind of forward than Atlanta United's ever played, because he's not the most mobile. So, you'd have to play differently with him up top. But yeah, I've always thought that could be a possibility in a pinch if you needed it. It just hasn't ever come up. So, yeah, I would consider him in that type of role. I think it's a possibility.
Anything else you want to catch up on before we turn the hour? Any other rumors, gossip, innuendo, news, or notes?
A couple things. Yeah, RSL will announce their new head coach and general manager this afternoon. Most indications are that it will be removing the interim tags, and it will be Freddie Juarez as the new head coach. Would make sense. The Jason Kreis discussion with RSL, I'm sure questions will be asked about that, and I wonder how they get answered, because it sounded like that was going to happen for a minute, and then all of a sudden that changed. So I'd be curious to see if questions come out there. Michelle Kaufman of the Miami Herald reported that Inter Miami is expected to name their head coach this week and 2 high-profile designated players by the end of the month. And she said the coaches linked most recently to the job are Marcelo Gallardo and Patrick Vieira. We'll see. But they're expected to have a coach this week. Stephen Goff of the Washington Post reported that all home openers are expected to be announced in the next week or so, and the full schedule hopefully before the holidays. That hasn't happened in recent years. Usually it's been early January for the full schedule. If they get that out before the holidays, that would be outstanding. There's kind of mixed bag of information when it comes to Charlotte. I think the important things about it are that the Board of Governors for Major League Soccer are meeting on Thursday. There were some reports that Charlotte would be announced as an expansion team on Friday. There's been some cold water poured on that by Jordan Rodriguez of The Athletic. I agree with what Jordan wrote about, usually that announcement is made in the city that is getting the team, and there's nothing reported about an event in Charlotte for Friday. So it would be very different if they announced it, from the New York office or whatever. That would be a different move. The other thing about it is that it's sounding like the expansion fee for Charlotte will be between $300 and $325 million. And according to Corey Leff, who's the founder of the daily sports business newsletter John Wall Street, also goes up on the Sports Illustrated website, the expansion fee for teams 31 and 32 is going to jump dramatically. And the reason that Leff thinks that's the case is it just doesn't make sense to the owners financially if it doesn't. Diluting their share in the league and diluting their share in Soccer United marketing, the owners have to get rewarded for that. And so they're going to ask a lot of money for teams to come in and dilute that to get to 31 and 32. We'll see how that gets handled. And I think that somewhat leads us into Tafka's questions that we'll get into after the break. If you have more questions on a Tuesday Thoughts edition of the show, tweet them at us at SoccerDownHere. We'll be right back after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinsky of Apolinsky and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Hour number 2, SDH, Brunch Edition, December 3rd. We have an opus that I think we have to discuss. Tafka occasionally goes off on things, in a good way. And this is another off-going from our friend Tafka.
So we start the lunch hour thusly. Thread, :
Uh-oh. Anybody who starts a thread with thread, is it in all caps? Please tell me it's all caps.
No.
Oh, that's when it's really good. Okay.
I'm so sick, those two words are in all caps,
Okay, there we go.
of people calling MLS a Ponzi/pyramid scheme, angry-faced red emoji.
Okay.
1, MLS is more popular today than in any prior year of its 25 years of existence. 2, MLS is at a greater on-field quality than any previous year. 3, MLS is watched in more countries than ever before. 4, MLS is considered a legitimate and desirable league of choice for many, in all caps, players across the planet. 5, MLS is looked upon favorably as a means of fiscally responsible league structure around the world. 6, MLS is the longest continuously running soccer league in American history. 7, MLS has, without question, grown as an investment opportunity, and the single entity partnership, in all caps, is entitled to set expansion fees at whatever price they feel is appropriate! If it's too high, then don't buy in! 8, much of the failures of quote, end quote, some clubs to turn profit is due to their own inept choices in scouting, contract management, marketing, and community relationship, not because of a failed system. And point final, 9. If you love soccer but hate/disparage MLS just because of its league structure, A, I can't help stupid. B, get over, in all caps, your pompous and pretentious BS. C, don't watch. Thusly, the 9 points of Tafka on his Tuesday Thoughts opus.
Oh, boy. Okay. All right, let's try to go point for point here. Let's start at the top. Number 1. And this is all about Tafka being upset with the claims that some make that MLS is a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme.
Check.
So, okay. First off, I think, before we go into the individual points here, I think that people who generally use that terminology, one, have an agenda. It's just because it's the same people who are using it a lot. It feels like something that people who have already made up their mind that they're not going to support MLS, or they have it in their mind that MLS makes things worse for the team that they support. That's the type of, comments that they're going to throw anytime about MLS expansion. It's just part of the conversation. It's hard to take it seriously because I think it gets thrown around so much. It's not because of the way that the league is structured and the way that these expansion teams come in. The single entity process, it's a different setup. I get why people use it as an insult. It's a bad choice of an insult. It's silly. Okay, let's get into the individual points, point by point. What's number one?
MLS is more popular today than in any prior year of its 25 years of existence.
Obviously. I mean, the attendance numbers, everything combined. Attendance, engagement, yes, TV ratings, they're not growing dramatically, but they're steady and growing just a little bit at a time. There are plenty of reasons to say that's the case. That doesn't address, people saying that it's a Ponzi scheme. I think when people say that it's only a Ponzi scheme, which is the insult that most people will use, that's just dumb. That's just foolish. This is just, it's just a fact. Like, MLS is more popular than it's ever been. Flat out.
Point two. MLS is at a greater on-field quality than any previous year.
I think so, across the board. I think when you factor in the sheer number of teams and the sheer number of top players, there is a case to be made for year one, year two of the league when you had 10 teams and the talent was not spread. It was condensed onto a couple of teams. Those early DC United teams, those early LA Galaxy teams, that first Chicago Fire team, some of the best teams in MLS history. That's definitely true. But when you talk about the larger scale of the league, from top to bottom, this is by far, it's not even close. And in the modern era of MLS, when you've had more than 10 teams, then it's not even close. The league, you compare it today to 2015 when Orlando and New York City came in, and it's night and day. The level is so much higher than it used to be.
Point three, MLS is watched in more countries than ever before.
That's one thing that doesn't get talked about enough that MLS has done an amazing job with, is selling TV rights in more countries around the world and it getting more interest in more countries around the world. That was something that jumped out to me from my conversation with Derek Ray and the growth in the interest in Major League Soccer in Great Britain. It's on at a time, kind of like the Premier League is here, except you have a lot of different European leagues around at the same time. In terms of a time slot, MLS is on at a time that not really much else on in a lot of parts of the world. Because Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, the major leagues of this hemisphere, they're not marketing themselves in that way. They're not putting world feeds out there in the same way. So if you want to pick up the rights, if you are a sports network in any country in the world and you want to pick up the rights to have a game on in the window that MLS games are broadcast, MLS is what you're going to go to because there's just not as much else out there. So MLS has capitalized on that and brought money into the league that way. It's been very good. It's raised the profile of the league, and it's helped change the overall worldwide perception of the league in a great way.
Point four. MLS is considered a legitimate and desirable league of choice for many, in all caps, players across the planet.
Yeah, 100%. Especially in this hemisphere. It needs to grow. It needs to be even more, but the strides that they've made are very, very good. And to say otherwise, again, there's just an agenda.
Point 5. MLS is looked upon favorably as a means of fiscally responsible league structure around the world.
I think that's one of the biggest things that people who want to throw this insult out there don't want to necessarily come to grips with. More leagues around the world are going to try to learn from MLS or copy things that MLS has done than the other way around. The stability from top to bottom in the league is incredibly attractive. Look south, look to Mexico and what's happened with Veracruz this year. Part of the meeting that'll be held today with Liga MX owners is to decide the fate of Veracruz. They shouldn't have been in the first division this year to begin with. And you want to get hung up on Ponzi schemes and pyramid schemes. Veracruz basically bought their way to stay in, and they shouldn't have. And they weren't capable of it. And we've had the issues that we've had this season with Veracruz. Happens in lots of parts of the world. You've had the issues in England with Bolton and Bury this year. It's only going to continue to grow. And we talked about it on Soccer Over There with Nick Alifi last night about Italy, and teams just don't have money. People want to get hung up on what was the biggest loss for an MLS team according to Forbes, $60 million.
Yeah.
What did Milan lose last year?
130?
130 or 150?
Yeah.
They shouldn't still be business.
Yeah, 130 million euro, I think is what it was.
Juve and Inter posted losses in 50, 60 million euro range. No, those leagues are looking at what MLS is doing and saying, man, how can we do that? Because, the Colorado Rapids aren't making a lot of money, but they're not about to go broke. Even the teams that are losing 16 million, many teams around the world are looking at that and saying, we want to be like that.
Yeah.
That's important. And it's something that I think gets lost in this, because I know there are people who enjoy things when they're smaller. And I totally get that. And they get their grassroots side of things, and that's what they support, and that's what they love. Totally understand that. I think the amount of energy that is spent trying to disparage things that you don't like is just a pointless way to live. Love what you love. Put your time into that. If you don't care about MLS, don't talk about it. Don't worry about it. What it's doing, I disagree with this thing that some people have tried to convince me of over the years, that MLS growing and having the success that Tafka points out, that everybody's pointed out, having that success comes at the expense of an NPSL team or a grassroots team. I disagree with that. It's different universes. I don't think there are investors out there who are deciding to put down, Tepper in Charlotte. If he wants to put down $325 million on an MLS team, I don't think you can draw the conclusion that if MLS didn't exist or it was structured differently and he decided, I'm going to go put that into an NPSL team. No, it's not going to happen. No, that's not the case. And to start a grassroots team and say that it can grow and do this, I don't think there are people out there who are putting their money into MLS who would put it into something else, because they could have done that already. And I don't think there are this large number of sponsors out there that are saying, I don't want to support MLS or the local MLS team because they don't have promotion relegation or they have single entity or this or that. I don't think that even factors into the discussion. I just don't. I could be completely wrong in that. If I am, I'll put my hand up and admit it when that comes to the fore. But I don't see it. I don't think MLS growing is a bad thing. And I think if you talk to a lot of smaller teams in the Atlanta area, in the Southeast, I think if you talk to a league like the Atlanta District Amateur Soccer League that is grassroots and has promotion relegation, they have grown because of what Atlanta United's accomplished. I think you have new teams that have launched all over the region because they've seen what Atlanta United has done. I don't think it's this thing that is limiting the growth of the game. I disagree with that. I think MLS's growth is MLS's growth. I think the USL Championship's growth has had a hand in it. That growth has happened because of MLS, because of their partnership, but also because USL has gotten away from some of the instability that they had that caused teams to break away and try to start the North American Soccer League. And then they had more instability than the USL had. And the USL learned from that and has been better. Have they been perfect? No. You have the case with Lansing in USL League One. That's a bad spot to be in. Fresno, bad spot to be in when teams go away. That's the worst thing that can happen. MLS has created a structure where you have had 3 teams go away in league history, and you could even somewhat argue the Chivas USA going away because they were replaced by LAFC. And now Miami gets another team decades later after the Fusion left, and Tampa has not. But that's it. That's better than the USL or the A-League or the old NASL or the old American Soccer League or the MISL or the National Professional Soccer League that was indoors, NPSL, or the CISL, or any other American soccer league that you can name. That's a better track record of teams having stability. It's a better track record of teams having stability in its first 25 years than the NFL, than the NBA. Major League Baseball would be the one that would be the same or better, I think. You didn't have a dramatic turnover when the National League and when the American League both started in their first 25 years. You had some, but not what you had in the NFL and the NBA especially, and nowhere near what you had in American professional soccer. The NHL stayed very small for 25 years, its first 25, right? I mean, you had the original 6. You had some other teams.
And then in the late 60s, you
out.
had your expansion when you doubled everything.
Yeah, but you're way down the road at that point. So, it's the stability is such an important thing, and it was such an important factor in why MLS is structured the way it is. And then even with that, you had the league in a very bad spot when they decided to contract Miami and Tampa and come back to 10 and create the roadmap to what you have now. Soccer United marketing and creating that and taking advantage of the opportunity that came when U.S. Soccer, I think it was IMG, that had the rights to market the U.S. Soccer Federation, and they were ready to balk on it. And you also had, I think, a scenario where you had issues with the World Cup TV rights, and it was all kinds of things. And MLS took advantage of the opportunity that was there and created Soccer United marketing, and that has helped MLS be stable and grow. And people get really hung up on these things that are good things. And I don't think that they're limiting the growth of a Chattanooga FC, of a Detroit City, of a Greenville in the NPSL. I don't think it is. I think it can help more than it hurts, because I don't think they're taking away sponsors or support or these sorts of things. I just disagree with that. I know people are going to be breaking things and throwing things when they hear me say that, and that's okay. I've put in time growing the grassroots side of it. I have a huge affinity for the NPSL, for grassroots soccer, because it's the lifeblood of it. But it can't be the only blood, because we've been there and done that, and the game was very small when that was the case. Soccer in the United States is healthier than it's ever been from a business perspective. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing at all. That's a good thing, because, I know people get hung up on modern football and modern soccer around the world, but it isn't available in the ways that you want it to be available if it's not successful as a business. It's just not. So other countries have to learn from how MLS has done and grown and been successful, and MLS has to learn from other countries. You have to continue to evolve. You have to continue to learn and you have to continue to grow the business because that's how it's going to continue to be successful.
Going back to the Forbes piece real quick, just before we go to Tafka's next point, NYCFC and Chicago lost 16 and Toronto lost 19, but I don't know if that's U.S. or Canadian.
Even the 19. I mean, Toronto also made a decision to pay very big on their designated players, bigger than most from a salary structure, and that has gotten them trophies. And, I would assume that they're not risking their business because of it. So, and the Canadian side could factor into that for sure. Definitely could. But they've made a decision based off what they can afford. That's not going to break them. That's the important thing, is even those teams that are losing money, that's not going to break them and put them out of business.
Yeah, with MLSC, you basically can just sit there and slide dollars from one aspect of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment to the other, whether it's through a building or whether it's to another franchise. And so looking at that number is, it's not that should not intimidate anybody and have them running around in circles like Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone. Point 6, MLS is the longest continuously running soccer league in American history.
That's actually not true. Okay, what did he? I want to get the specifics correct. Okay, what did he say?
MLS is the longest continuously running soccer league in American history.
Yeah, not true. The American Soccer League is the longest continuously running. It's not running now, not currently running, but continuously running. The American Soccer League ran from the 30s into the mid-80s. Small, mostly regional. The first American Soccer League tried to be big. It had internal issues, also Great Depression limited it. It's a story that I need to learn more about from the 20s, because you had fairly big names come into the United States to play in the original American Soccer League. The second version was smaller, mostly semi-pro, but it did run from the 30s into the 80s. The Georgia Generals played in the American Soccer League in 1982. You had the Carolina Lightning, not Lightning. There was no G. There was an
apostrophe.
N and an apostrophe. Rodney Marsh coached the Carolina Lightning that played in Charlotte, first professional team in Charlotte for soccer. So it ran longer, but it was much smaller. And when they did try to grow in the mid-70s to kind of try to compete with the North American Soccer League, it didn't go so well.
I remember the Georgia Generals playing at DeKalb Memorial Stadium.
1 year, and they ran out of money halfway through, and they had to beg and borrow to try to keep going. And I believe that one of the players, after their playoff loss in Game 2 in Detroit, they had to play a Game 3, and they did not have money for hotel, and one of the players' parents had to pay for the hotels for the team to stay, and then they lost that game, and club went out of business.
All right, so let's see. Point 7. MLS has, without question, grown as an investment opportunity, and the single entity partnership, in all caps, is entitled to set expansion fees at whatever price they feel is appropriate. If it's too high, then don't buy in.
I mean, nitpicky. The single entity, it's not a partnership, it's a single business. So I think partnership's just probably the wrong choice of words there, but that's nitpicky. The biggest point here is I do think it's pretty clear that the investment has proven to be a good one. And when you see the sales of teams and portions of teams and the amounts that they're going for, and then you compare to the Forbes valuations and stadiums being built and training grounds being built and investments being made like that, I think it's obvious that it's been a good investment. Is it a league that is making the amount of money, and the comparison, we talked about it when these Forbes valuations came out, if you compare Atlanta United and Ajax, for example, is Atlanta United making the amount of money that Ajax is? No. But it's not losing the amount at all. It's nowhere close when those things come up. And you don't have the dramatic fluctuations in it. And that's the important thing, because that gets back to that cost certainty. That gets back to that stability. That gets back to why MLS is a single entity to begin with. Because they did not want to have what happened to the North American Soccer League happen. They didn't want to have what happened to any professional soccer league in the United States happen. They wanted it to be stable. And that's why it's structured the way it is. And the part about, yes, the single entity, the league itself, they can say the expansion fee is X. You want in? And so far as they've increased that amount, people have said they want in.
No one's blinked.
Now, if they go up the way that they're talking about, which the league hasn't specifically said this, but it's been speculated, that expansion teams 31 and 32, you could be asking in the $500-600 million range. If they go up to that, is that too much of a jump from the $300 to $325 million that Charlotte's expected to pay? Maybe so. And then you figure out where the numbers match up and if you want to bring that team in. But you also, and I think this is the part that the Ponzi scheme and pyramid scheme thing to me is the just annoying insult that people want to throw around. You're diluting the share of the people who are already in because of the single entity structure. And you're diluting the share of Soccer United marketing as a business of the people who are already owners of it. So that money is going in to dilute that share to the existing owners saying, yes, we want to basically sell part of the business. And that's a decision that you make as you grow. And if you want to do it, you do it. And if you've got somebody who wants to spend it, they spend it. And if they don't, they don't. That's where you're at right now. Until you get to a point that you're starting to talk about promotion relegation and different levels and these types of things, that is what it is at the moment. So if they set it at 600 and people want to pay 600 million, then they found the right value. Because if you have teams that are going from Atlanta United paying anywhere between 60 and 80 million, I think 70 is what's generally been regarded as the price that Arthur Blank paid to bring Atlanta United in 2014. When you go from, let's say, 70 to 500 million in value in 5 years, it's kind of hard to argue with that. Now, where does it keep going? And that's what people have to figure out. You know, can Atlanta United be worth, $700, $800, $900 million? I don't know. I have no idea. Where's the ceiling? We don't know yet. But the growth that you've seen so far, it's been pretty dramatic.
Point 8. Much of the failures of some, in quotation marks, clubs to turn profit is due to their own inept choices in scouting, contract management, marketing, and community relationship, not because of a failed system.
Yeah, I don't think the system has anything to do with Toronto, NYC, and Chicago losing the amounts that they lost. I think they're comfortable losing the amounts that they lost because they know that their business is stable. They have Soccer United marketing coming in, money coming in as well. Toronto made a decision to win things and spend the money that they thought it would take to win things, and they've won things. Chicago, we've talked about it many, 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 many times about the bad decisions Chicago's made. NYC has had to pay at Yankee Stadium because they can't get a stadium built. That's the truth of the matter. So, DC United was in that situation too when they were paying to be at RFK because they couldn't get a stadium built. That's why you're losing money, flat out. You get the stadium built, things change really quickly. So those amounts, it's not that big of a deal. And as Forbes said, their numbers in terms of revenue did not factor in revenues from Soccer United marketing. When you compared the overall losses of MLS versus the overall speculated profits of Soccer United marketing, you're in the positive. So, there you go.
Point last, if you love soccer but, quote, hate/disparage MLS just because of its league structure, A, it can't help stupid. B, get over, in all caps, your pompous and pretentious BS. C, don't watch.
Just ignore it. I mean, that's the thing that I would say is I think when people start the disparaging of something else with "I really love this," no, you're missing the point. If you enjoy the game in a different way, if you enjoy a different aspect of the game, if you have issues with the structure, if you don't like the structure, if you don't like the way people have done things, all that's completely valid and fine. That's cool. Everybody makes their own decisions. But don't waste your time hating something that you don't like. Just don't. Just spend your time loving something that you love. Like, I don't get the problem with that. And if you love the game and if you love your league or your club and it's small and it's grassroots, love it and put your time into it and help it grow. Not every business, not every club, not everything is built to be massive. Doesn't mean it's not good. You know, I mean, I always go back and compare it to music and things like that. There are plenty of bands that I have loved over the years that if you put them in an arena or in a stadium, it would be terrible. It's not going to work. They're not that band. They're great. But they are what they are. They're not going to be massive rock stars. And I love bands that are massive rock bands. I mean, bands that have been the biggest band in the world at different times and can play in front of 100,000 people. Cool. I enjoy that. But there's plenty of bands that are probably best served playing in front of a theater or in a club of 500 people. And that's cool too. But I don't get the just wasting your time hating things. It's easy to do, and yeah, it can get you followers on social media, and being negative and all that can do that. But, man, time's short. Spend your time loving what you love. If you love something, love it. Don't hate something else that's not taking away from it. That's the thing that I don't get. I disagree. I think MLS helps everything more than it hurts it. I really, truly believe that. And I know there are people who really, truly disagree with that, and that's cool. I've just seen it firsthand. I think that soccer is in a better place in the metro Atlanta region and in the Southeast due to the success of Atlanta United. I think that the overall game in the region is in a better place. So I don't think MLS being successful hurts other aspects of the game. I think it helps it. Doesn't mean you have to celebrate it if you don't like it, but just stop wasting your time like hating on it and spewing things on social media about it. I don't block many, but those are the types of accounts that I'll block. Definitely mute, and if it gets personal, they get blocked by me because I don't get it. I don't want to waste my time with negativity. I don't know. That's it. That's my reaction to the Opus. We're going to take a quick break. So if you guys have reactions, go ahead and tweet them at us. We'll get into some other news and rumors and notes and stuff right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today. at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, December 3rd. Brunch edition. Or lunch afterwards for some people.
Yes, check.
We'll get into reentry draft stage 2 here in just a minute, but some rumors to catch up on. Let's start with the big ones. PSG folks, it's a site that covers PSG, Paris United. They reported on Monday that Edinson Cavani had been in talks to move to the LA Galaxy because he's falling out of Thomas Tuchel's plans in Paris. The requested salary from Cavani's agent was reported to be more than $11 million per year, and the Galaxy have balked at that. Miami has also expressed interest in Cavani, but they have not begun talks. Last year, the highest salary in the league was over 7. I think it was Zlatan. That's a big jump to 11. I'd probably balk too.
Yep.
So I'll have to wait and see if he can find that price tag. The reports of Brian Lozano from Santos Laguna to LAFC. Vince LaRosa, who is a writer for LAFC Digital, and he hosts the Inside LAFC podcast. He tweeted, "Hate to always be the bearer of bad news, but I have it on good authority that LAFC is not in talks for Lozano and has not submitted an offer." That was the one that I didn't think made sense because people saw it as a replacement for Rossi, but I think Brian Rodriguez has already been the replacement for Rossi. You could sell Rossi and you don't have to directly replace Rossi. So if you bring that money in and you have the DP spot, I think you're going to use it in a different way and not a similar type of player. So we'll see. Lozano's an incredibly talented player. I'd love to see him in MLS. LAFC just didn't seem to be the one that made sense for him. Alan Pulido and Chivas. So Chivas Guadalajara made an announcement on Monday that Pulido is available for transfer. This is translated. It's a passage from a press statement. Given his manifest desire to take another course in his career, Club Deportivo Guadalajara will support Alan Pulido in this decision to find the best option for all parties, which marks the end of his cycle of just over 3 years as a player of the sacred flock, the Goats, the Chivas. Since from this moment his condition is transferable. So basically he is available for transfer. Who's going to come in first? Because you've had San Jose linked, you've had Orlando linked, you've had Sporting Kansas City linked, you've had Chicago linked. Chicago has gotten the most traction as of late. I don't think Orlando will go for Pulido because Orlando is more closely linked to Herman Cano from Colombia, with reports out of Colombia that an offer has been put on the table for Cano. Pulido to Chicago makes the most sense. San Jose would make a lot of sense because of the link to Matias Almeida, but I think Chicago wants to spend the most, has the most to spend, and would get the biggest impact from Pulido there. I don't think Kansas City can match what Chicago could pay. So I think he ends up in Chicago, and I think he becomes their prime guy. And that's not a bad fit. It's not bad at all. The only other person that I think you could go get right now that he's not even necessarily available would be Chicharito. And you're going to have to pay a whole lot more to get Chicharito. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. But Pulido to Chicago makes a ton of sense, and Chivas is saying he is available. The reports on central midfielders from Palmeiras heading to Dallas. Third Degree is reporting that the transfer of Thiago Santos from Palmeiras to Dallas is done $1 million. Rafael Del Minto of the Taladentro channel is reporting that initially out of Brazil. So that's more depth in the central midfield for Dallas if that happens. 3 players to keep an eye on that have been linked with moves to MLS but not specific teams, and they're all in very different stages of their career. Let's start with the youngest one, 17-year-old striker Manfred Ugalde of Saprissa. Drawing interest from MLS, an unnamed manager was reportedly there to watch him in the second leg of their semifinal loss with Herediano. They were knocked out on penalties. 8 goals in 17 matches in the Apertura and in the CONCACAF League for Ugalde, who is 17. I love trying to get a player like that into MLS. That's the type that you can get at probably a reasonable transfer, but could potentially be worth a lot more after a good run in MLS. And I think he will make more and go to a bigger club going from MLS potentially to Europe than from Costa Rica to Europe. That's where MLS is playing the right kind of role, I think, in the hemisphere. 2 more veteran players that are linked to MLS. Peruvian winger Alejandro Hoberg, 28 years old, 4 goals, 5 assists for Universitario in 17 matches in the most recent season in Peru. Valued at $800,000 by Transfermarkt. So you're talking Tam Gam type of move for Hoberg. And another one, Antonio Barrero, is a Paraguayan forward, 30 years old, has been really good at Libertad in Paraguay. ABC.com out of Paraguay is reporting that he is interested in making the move to MLS. Current contract ends in 2020. Wants to come to MLS, not ruling out staying at Libertad, where he's been since 2014. So you're talking about a player who is looking for a new challenge in his career in Barrero. So that's your update on rumors that we think are at least credible at this point. There's lots of rumors flying around there about lots of different things. And Ezequiel Barco was linked in rumors to Inter and Roma, and he'd been previously linked in rumors to Arsenal and Manchester United, and Calcio Mercato is on the case in Italy. There's not a ton to go on. Is he being scouted? Is he being watched by big clubs? Yeah, because that's what they do. There's not really much more than that yet. So that's where we're at in the rumor world.
All right. Got a couple of other folks with questions on the Twitters.
Okay.
Derek Creighton wanted to know how long Lagos Kunga's loan was for.
Just through the end of the year. So he'll be back in Atlanta next year, and he's under contract. So he's on Atlanta United's roster for 2020 right now.
Alex, when it comes to all of the scheduling shenanigans that we've been talking about over the last couple of days, he says that we need to get at Mike Conti 929's divisions in front of at MLS.
Yeah, I wonder if they have an aversion to divisions and that structure. I mean, it's what other leagues have gone to solve some of these scheduling issues. That's why you go to divisions. It's to solve scheduling, conflicts. So I think you're probably going to need to do it. I really think you're going to need to go to 3 conferences, but I don't know. I don't. They need to maybe think a little more outside the box, and I don't want to say that they're not, because we don't really know. We don't know what the roadmap is with the new teams coming in, and I hope they lay that out once they finalize Team 30. I hope they lay out the roadmap through the 22 season of what it will look like and how it will look. That's all I'm hoping for, is just a little more clarity.
Okay, Kerry Smith reached out to both of us and wanted to know what we thought about the SDH Tenorio piece when it comes to, let me see how it was phrased. Apparently they looked at stage 2 of the MLS reentry draft, and it's the end of 3 weeks of all this stuff. But apparently he and Tenorio redesigned the 3-week period. And so stage 2 of the reentry draft is today, but I haven't had the chance to look at the SDH Tenorio piece.
No, I'll have to dig into that. I have not read the reimagining of the whole system. It needs to be reimagined. I'm definitely on board with that. This whole stuff is complicated. So Sam followed up in a tweet just a little bit ago about some players that he could see being selected today in the reentry draft. Remember, you're basically picking up their rights, and then you get to negotiate. Juan Agudelo, David Guzman, Miguel Ibarra, Joao Plata, Derek Etienne, Dylan Serna. Guzman, I've seen some reports that Guzman would be headed back to Saprissa in Costa Rica if he doesn't get picked up and does a new deal. Ibarra will be a player in demand. Plata maybe a little less, because I'd like to think he's been available from Real Salt Lake. I mean, now if you get to basically pick up his rights and negotiate a deal, it's maybe a little more, valuable, a little more interesting to you. But I wonder what the market is out there for Joao Plata. I like Dylan Serna a lot as a young player. I'm a little surprised that the Rapids have moved on from him. There's a lot of battles for positioning in those spots, so I get it. But Serna's a talented player. Etienne is a little bit tougher to predict. I would have thought he'd be further along by now. It just hasn't happened. Is that on the Red Bulls? Is it on Etienne? Don't know. We've talked about Agudelo. I absolutely think he will be somewhere in the league in a prominent role, and I just keep coming back to Montreal for some reason. I really think that makes the most sense for him.
And with that, we are officially caught up, other than a bit of soccer over there news that apparently Brescia has sacked their manager after only 3 matches.
Yeah, we talked about that last night.
Yeah. So Fabio Grosso out the door.
They brought back the guy that they sacked to bring in Grosso.
Yes. So
yeah,
fun with Brescia.
Brescia's an absolute mess. That's why Mario Balotelli needs to be in MLS. Get out of there because it's stupid. It's just an absolute, box of toys over there right now. So avoid
box of misfit toys.
Something. It's bad. Get out of there. Don't go to Brescia is rule number 1. Some other odds and ends in the soccer world. Austin FC announced plans for a $45 million training facility. The big one that popped off yesterday is in Rhode Island, in Pawtucket. I know about Pawtucket because of the Pawtucket Red Sox, AAA baseball, and I was always like, Pawtucket? Where's Pawtucket? Well, they might be the spot of a USL Championship team. There is a venue that is trying to be built, and I know they're seeking, I think, tax money to help build it or build the area around it. It would be the centerpiece for the Tidewater Landing project. The team would kick off in 2022 in the USL Championship. The rights to the team have been acquired by Brett Johnson, who is currently the co-chair for Phoenix Rising and is the leader of Fortuitous Partners, an investment firm specializing in sports-anchored mixed-use real estate projects. So this is a bigger project than just a stadium, just a team. And if it all comes together, I mean, can Pawtucket be a good spot for USL Championship? They've been a good spot for AAA baseball for a long, long time. Do they still have the Pawtucket Red Sox, or did that go away?
I thought they still had the Paw Sox.
I'm not sure.
Efforting.
It's a city at that level that would make a lot of sense for USL Championship. And I know there had been some potential rumors of a link-up between them and the New England Revolution, but I don't know if that would happen now that the Revs have opted to go with their own USL League One team. I don't know if it needs to happen. So
yep, they're still around.
Okay, so Pawtucket could be part of the USL Championship. More USL Championship, and Memphis. Tim Howard is set to take over as the general manager, according to Jeff Reuter of The Athletic. He's a minority owner in the team, and this would probably have been the plan all along once he retired. According to Reuter and The Athletic, he's already handling roster management, helping make final decisions on returning players, working with Tim Mulqueen to identify new signings. So Tim Howard will get involved in the front office of Memphis 901 going forward. The Las Vegas stuff is still up in the air, and I don't see any way that Vegas beats out Charlotte for Team 30. Could they be one of the 31 or 32? Sure, potentially. There's a negotiation between the city and the Renaissance companies. It would be a new stadium near Cashman Field where the Las Vegas Lights play. And this is the one that involves the Lights, that they would be the team that would try to move up to join MLS. So the deadline now, as they're negotiating, has been pushed back to February 5th. I think MLS team number 30 will be announced by then. Even with the back and forth about Charlotte, I think Charlotte's going to get it, and I think they'll get it before then. So you're probably talking about a longer window here with Vegas and the Lights. There was another potential bid out of Vegas that did not involve the Lights, and that one's been kind of silent for a while. So Vegas has some stuff to sort out. I think Phoenix still wants to be part of this. Haven't heard much from your Detroits or your Raleighs or your San Diegos, any of that in a while on MLS expansion. So stay tuned. It really looks like Charlotte is all but done as number 30, and maybe we'll get a sense of that coming out of the Board of Governors meeting on Thursday.
The Paw Sox are in the process of leaving Pawtucket, heading to Worcester, Mass.
That's what I thought. Okay.
The mayor and the state commerce secretary wanted to try to figure out something to fill the void, got some proposals about 6 months ago. The plan for Fortuitous hinges on approximately $70 to $90 million in public support, most of it from the state. This is quoting the Providence Journal, through a, quote, tax increment financing plan that allows the developer to use a portion of new tax revenue generated around the development to pay for construction. And what they're looking at, and the pictures are very, very nice in the Providence Journal, 7,500-seat stadium right there on the river, and then you'd have a pedestrian bridge over to the other side of the river where your other section of the development would be. So that's what they're looking at right now. 20% hopefully being financed through this tax proposal.
Okay, that's still a lot, so we'll see if that comes through. It is hashtag Giving Tuesday, and for those of you who don't follow the rotating cast of hashtags that pop up from time to time, this was something that has really gotten a lot of traction in recent years, as you have Black Friday and I think Small Business Saturday and then Cyber Monday with all your online sales. So Giving Tuesday is where nonprofits really put the word out there about what they do, and we've talked about Soccer in the Streets quite a bit on the show. They are absolutely worthy of your donation if you're looking for somewhere soccer related to donate on a Giving Tuesday. The Fuji's family in Clarkston also have programs that are getting underway in Ohio. Another great organization that I know you support specifically, John.
Yep.
Others to keep an eye on, a lot of different clubs, youth clubs in the metro area have a foundation component or have a fund for outreach and or scholarships. So if you're at a club and you're wondering if they have that and you're not sure, check with your club leadership on it. I know Cherokee Soccer Association, who we'll be hanging out with tomorrow night, up in Canton at Reformation Brewery, they have one, and it's been a very well-received foundation up in the Canton area. And the money that we're raising tomorrow on a Giving Wednesday will be going towards their foundation and a lot of the different things that they do. Really cool story on a day like this out of Houston. Dynamo co-owners Jake Silverstein and Ben Gould are announcing their intent to create 15 mini soccer pitches across the greater Houston area over the next 5 years. You're seeing more and more teams do this, and the U.S. Soccer Foundation is involved in it, and they've really led the way in this. That's another great potential, donation spot for you if you're looking to give on Giving Tuesday, is the U.S. Soccer Foundation, who have worked with a number of agencies all over the country in growing the game and creating these types of places for kids to play and having programs attached to it that help. Another one is the Southern Crescent Soccer Foundation, which is an arm of the Georgia Revolution NPSL team. They've done some really cool work with elementary schools in Henry County, and I believe they're trying to expand into Clayton County and grow what they've been doing from a really grassroots, homespun base. The Morrison family puts their time and energy, and Alec, one of Eric, the owner of the Georgia Revolution, Alec, one of the sons, is one of the main coaches and has had a huge impact at these different elementary schools that kids don't necessarily have access to soccer. They either can't afford it or they can't get to training sessions. And when you can take the soccer to them in their school, you can have a huge impact. So if you're thinking about giving and you haven't decided where to give on a Giving Tuesday, that's a number of different organizations that you can consider and take your time and figure out, which one speaks to you and which one, in a perfect world, it doesn't become just a one-off, giving on a Giving Tuesday because of a hashtag. It becomes something that you get involved in and, champion and advocate for, but also if you can spend your time and get to know some of the initiatives that they're doing. And all these different foundations and groups have different aims. So find one that makes sense for you and jump in if you're looking to give on a Giving Tuesday in the soccer world.
Yeah, and at the same time, I know that a lot of us sit there and look at the calendar and go, we only have 4 weeks left. Oh, crap, I've got to find something that I see that's shining in the window that I'm just going to donate to so I can get my donation in under the wire. But, you hope that when you're looking for that cause and you're looking for that something to invest not just your money in, but if it's something that's attractive to you, that you can invest your time and see how your small part is a part of a lot of small parts that help move something forward and really help that particular charity or that organization continue to move forward. I think that that's the rewarding part in all of this. It's that, you might do something for the first time this year, but you look and you see the benefits, and it's hopefully something that you won't just do for this just one time, that you continue to make it a part of your DNA, really, when it comes to what you're doing on a yearly basis.
Yeah, I mean that's the key. Is in a perfect world, it creates a relationship, and that's what these organizations really thrive on. And the other thing I would tell you, as somebody who was involved in fundraising for Soccer in the Streets for a decade, don't get hung up on, well, I can't give that much, so it won't have an impact. Organizations like Soccer in the Streets, Fuji's, Southern Crescent, ones that I know enough about what they do and how they do it, $5 has an impact for all of them. $10 has an impact for all of them. Every dollar has an impact for all of them. They're really good at stretching what they have to work with and making the most of it and passing that on to the kids and the families that they serve. So don't get hung up and think that, if you can't give much, that it's not going to be valuable. It is. It really, truly is.
Yes, no doubt. It's not. A lot of folks just sit there and say, well, I can't do X. Okay, well, then do what's comfortable. Just because you're not matching what you see in front of you doesn't mean it's not going to make an impact. So
and if you can't, even if you can't, look, hey, I completely understand it. If you don't have anything to give, retweet, share a link, spread the word. Like, things like that are incredibly valuable too. So you can give on a Giving Tuesday. If you can't afford to give money, you can still give in different ways. Yeah. So it's a time to think about, the good of the game and the good of everything, but specifically in our soccer world, the good of the game and organizations that can use that benefit. So spread the word and share, tweet at us some organizations that you either give to or love to give to, or just think that our listeners should know about. Tweet at us at Soccer Down Here, share it with us, and use that Giving Tuesday hashtag, and we will spread the word as well. So with that said, that's going to do it for a Tuesday. Tomorrow, we've reminded you all week, don't forget Reformation Brewery tomorrow night. It's going to be a little chilly, so dress warmly. It's going to be pretty crowded, so get there early, especially if you want to get a spot to park. Carpool if you can. It's going to be a lot of fun. Michael Parkhurst hanging out with us on a special SDH evening edition. We will be here in the morning at 9 o'clock. We will have stoppage time over at the Facebook 92.9 The Game page at 2 o'clock, and then we'll be headed up to Canton for an SDH special edition, raising money for the Cherokee Soccer Association and their foundation, and hanging out with Parky and talking about kind of where he is and everything that he's planning to do now that he is retired. So it'll be a fun conversation with Michael Parker. So we hope to see you guys tomorrow night. We hope to be talking to you guys in the morning on the app and on Spreaker and on soccerdownhere.net. And go have your lunch, John. Eat your pasta.
Mucha pasta, y'all.
Mucha plata, y'all.